In this final episode of this South LA Then and Now mini-series for the South Hoover Hospital, we'll hear Harriet discuss both persecution and opportunity in the Vermont-Slauson neighborhood. And she'll also speak on why Dr. Pilson decided to make this neighborhood his permanent home despite its shifting demographics. So let's actually go back a bit. Harriet, tell me, what do you remember about growing up?
Okay, here's what I remember. My mother took me to school, to kindergarten, and the school was 52nd Street Grammar School. And in those days, they had to register me. I remember that day so well because my mother she didn't speak real English really well. And so they put me in the class with, because I was speaking Russian at the time. Now I can't remember one word of Russian, not one. And they would speak that in the house mainly. And so they took me to the kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Woodward. I'll never forget her. She took care of me, and she taught me a perfect English in about 3-4 months, and she would, those days we had to take naps in the school we had a mat. And I remember we would fall asleep. Actually, little kids, they can fall asleep. I mean, I can't sleep now for beans, but they used to do that. And then in the school was the first time I found out that everybody hated me because I was Jewish. And they wouldn't let me play on certain things, the other kids. And I finally asked them, they wouldn't let me go on the maypole, which I'm very athletic. I was a golfer and a tennis player and anything outside, baseball, volleyball, anything. So they wouldn't let me play, and they wouldn't let me play a softball. And finally I said, well, why don't you let me play with you? And they said, because you killed Jesus. And I said, I killed Jesus. And I went home and I asked Dad, I said, who's Jesus? This is how I found out.
I'm laughing, but it's not funny. Okay.
This is the way you asked me about school and growing up. This is what I grew up with. And also I remember I couldn't be a brownie because I was Jewish, and they the women who were running that, the mothers, and said, well, you can't, I'm sorry, you just can't be in there. You can't be a ground, you can't be a Girl Scout. You can't do that. And my parents were always working. My mother worked with my father in the office. She did all the hiring and firing, and she got all the equipment. She was really good at numbers, and she, saw to it that the kitchen was fully stocked. And
she set us up with Christmas accounts when I was a kid.
Yeah. I said, yeah.
That's what they were called at the bank.
Yeah. She was the money person, although my father was a complete boss of her. But that's what she liked it. So what can I tell you? The schools, when I got to junior high, down near junior high, the teachers were wonderful. They're just wonderful. But the kids were still, pretty anti-Jew. And that's what I was, a Jew. So my father...
Not overly religious, by the way. Okay.
We're not religious.
People label you with an identity, and that's the way it is. That's the way it was.
I have to tell you a sad story. I was coming home from school one day, and this boy wanted to beat me up. This little boy, this weak little boy. So I said, you want to beat me up? He said, yeah. I said, meet me in the alleys. So where the alleys crossed, we had a half walk. A half walk you could find between Hoover and Vermont, as where the houses are, like in the middle of the street. There's a walk that goes like in Venice Beach with houses on it facing the walk. They would go north-south instead of east-west. It might still be there, and there were houses on that walk. I said, but there was also another alley crossing there, so 2 alleys are crossed. So I said, okay, meet me, at such and such a place. So I met him there after school. And what I had to do, I had to break his arm. And I broke his arm. I twisted it until it broke. I felt it break. Guess who set his arm? My father.
Cleaning up after my mother.
Did you tell him?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Did you tell him? Did you tell you that
Of
you did it?
course I told
yeah,
him.
yeah.
Of course he was glad that I broke the kid's arm. And so I bet you didn't think you were gonna get this kind of conversation.
No, but I think that's the thing that always kind of keeps me coming back to this work, because you think it's one way and then it's
another way. And
Right.
I will tell you not only about the half walk, but on the corner of 54th and Hoover, there was a nice drugstore on one side, a pool hall across the street, and a furniture manufacturing company on another corner, but I can't remember the fourth corner. For some reason, I can't remember that. But I remember all this. And there was a streetcar on 54th and streetcar on Hoover, and there was a bus on Figueroa.
And I think one of my last questions before we close is, was the 57th and Hoover sort of like a safe haven for your father? Like when he chose that, was that like a Jewish community, or was it?
It wasn't a Jewish community at all. It was medium to low income people. And he was comfortable with that. And because he was trying to make a living, he didn't always have any money. He was at 50. He lived during the Depression on 58th and Hoover, and I guess they had a rented house there. And I know that they were eating potatoes for a long time. So money was for eating for my father, and for being able to go out to a restaurant. There was
and to build his career,
yeah,
and to be able to invest in the community, and in buildings and in real estate. And again, a foreign concept that there he was, if he could save some money and buy something that he gets to keep. But no, it was not a Jewish enclave where they were.
Not at all.
No. So, but he was concerned about it for his kids growing up, because he might have been surprised that it was inhospitable. Okay?
He was comfortable there. That
Yeah.
was his street.
Well, he could feel that even if it was not hospitable to Jewish people, that he was so really gifted and accomplished that it probably gave him a feeling of being in more control. That if he was the big doctor in the neighborhood and provided these services to the community, that maybe that would keep him in better esteem. Is probably maybe deep down of why he was so comfortable, because he could feel comfortable in his accomplishments and his service to the community, and that gave him,
After all, it was a community hospital.
yeah, it was a community hospital, and he could overcome some of that inhospitable. And not everybody, of course, was inhospitable. There was just some ignorant people, that some of them had more power than others.
It was ignorance, because that's all it was. That's a good word for it.
Right. Yeah. And he just was able to slough that off pretty much, but did what he could. But that's probably why he felt comfortable once he really, got the lay of the land, but he really loved it. And because there are people who appreciate what he was all about and what he did. Many people from every background. And as the demographics changed, he was even more beloved. When the neighborhood was no longer predominantly white, or just Hispanic and African American, they loved him. For the most part, just because he loved them. Okay, and he did what he could for that community. So You know, we're proud of what he
I'll
did.
tell you something else that Bobby, I don't know whether he knows this or not. To this day, if somebody said that I myself could repurchase my house on 57th Street, no matter what, I would go live there right now. I want to.
Oh, she tells me all the time, I want you to
tell
go
her,
back there and buy that house from those people, because she wants to move there.
I want to
wants to
move
move
there.
back.
You know why? I'm comfortable.
My younger brother went and went to go look at the house a couple of years ago, and the folks who had bought it came out, saw him there. You know, he stood out. You know, and they're going, I bet your family used to have this house. He goes, that's exactly right. They were like, come on in, you know, and they gave him a tour, and he just loved it. But yeah, my mother bothers me all the time that we should go try and buy that house back. But
It's just that
I think
I'm
the same family's been there a long time.
Yeah, they have. I'm comfortable in that house, in that street, and that's the way I feel about it. And on all the streets around there, that they're a comfort to me. I don't care who's living there. If I want to live there, I should be able to live there.
Yeah.
And I think that just speaks to certainly the home that, you know, your father, your grandfather has built. The fact that you want to go back. There's so many people I hear, if they had the opportunity, they'd want to burn down their home. But you all want, you know, if you could keep it, that's great. I mean, and I just think it's so great just to hear how you all talk and really kind of live the history, you know, Dr. Pilson's history, and it plays an incredible part of your life and definitely your success. Thank you for tuning in to this South LA Then and Now mini-series on the South Hoover Hospital. I hope this conversation really helped illustrate a unique perspective on the history of the region, and most importantly, on the history of the South Hoover Hospital. Through conversations like these, we're able to get a deeper understanding of what happened and how things change over time. Until the next episode, I'll catch you around on the recap.